What is up, ladies and gentlemen? But most of all, you ladies out there, thanks for clicking on another episode of Break the Silence. I am your host, Cyborg, Joel Embiid. Let's talk about it. Split cow! We just watched one of the greatest regular season performances in NBA history by Joel Embiid. A performance that encapsulated everything that makes him great, everything that makes him dominant, all his skill sets, and everything that we love about Joel Embiid. We're going to break that down and we're going to talk about this game because he became the first player in NBA history to have at least 50 points, 10 rebounds, 5 assists, and 5 blocks. And he really blew those numbers out of the water. So we need to talk about this. We need to talk about what this means for the Sixers, what this means for Embiid. It is the MVP case because if you remember before the season, Embiid was my pick for MVP. But first, please take a second to like and subscribe to the channel. We're up over 500 subs. We're headed for 600. So if you could, please hit that little button, help a brother out. Posting NBA content almost every night. So if you want to, if you love NBA content, hit that little button, help me out. Appreciate it. But let's talk about this. So Embiid had 59 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists, and 7 blocks. And so he was 2 assists and 3 blocks away from a 59-point quadruple-double. And he shot 70% from the field. Embiid was dominating in the paint, dominating from the free throw line, and dominating in the mid-range, showing off the full arsenal of his skills. Now, let me take you back. The first time I ever watched Joel Embiid play, I was a freshman in college. I was at Miami University. And I was sitting in my dorm room and I turned on the Philadelphia 76ers and I watched this big man that could dribble, that could shoot, that had a back to the basket game, that was big enough to physically impose his will in the paint as well. And I immediately thought to myself, this is the most skilled big man that I've ever watched play. Because if you remember, a lot of the big men that I grew up watching were Shaq physically dominating, Dwight physically dominating. And then you got guys like Pau Gasol, Tim Duncan. I almost consider them more forwards than traditional centers. So when I'm talking about Embiid, one of the most, to me, he was the most skilled center I had ever watched. And it reminded me of the man whose jersey I'm wearing right now, Hakeem Olajuwon. I never had the opportunity to watch Hakeem play live, obviously. But the way everyone described his game, his dream shake, his skill set, his defense. That's what I saw. That's what I envisioned when I saw Joel Embiid. And we see performances every once in a while that are truly all-time. This year, we have had no 50-point performances. And tonight, Darius Garland gave us 51 and Joel Embiid gave us 59. Now, the Philadelphia 76ers needed every bit of that to beat this Utah Jazz team that's really frisky, really fights hard, and plays tough. And the Jazz have lost a couple in a row. Here, they're now 10-5, still tied for the top of the Western Conference. We'll see what happens with the Jazz going forward. I talk a lot about the Jazz, so we're going to try to focus on Embiid here tonight because I think that's where our focus should be. But 70%, and here's the thing about Joel Embiid that's so impressive. You get to a point where you can no longer guard this man, so you have to almost try to foul him. And last night, he played last night too against the Wizards and had 42 points in that game. So this is the second night of a back-to-back. I was really worried about his conditioning because he started the season really cold. Him and James Harden were playing really weird. James Harden was dribbling the air out of the basketball, kind of taking some of the opportunities away from Embiid. Now, I hope James Harden comes back and together they can create a good combo, but James Harden going out kind of gave Embiid the chance to really get in a rhythm this season and get his conditioning back, just get in the feel for this NBA season. And man, oh man, has he ever. I think that right now, if the Sixers can get to the second or third seed in the Eastern Conference, finish the season, as a top 4 seed, he's going to be right in the middle of those MVP talks because statistically he's going to be through the roof. He's going to have these monster performances like this. Tonight he's a plus 25 and 7 blocks. In the fourth quarter alone, he had 25 points and 5 blocks. That's good for a whole NBA game. He had it in one quarter, and he gave the Jazz all that they can handle. Now, the Jazz are to me, this might be the one team that kind of is a bad matchup for the Utah Jazz because they don't have a big man that can really contend with a guy like Joel Embiid. But a lot of teams don't. So that's why when you're talking about getting to the playoffs and you play teams like the Boston Celtics, you play teams like the Atlanta Hawks, Joel Embiid becomes so valuable because they don't have anyone that can stop that. And Clint Capella's nice. Robert Williams are not. They're both nice players. But when Joel Embiid is playing like this Philadelphia 76ers team is a threat to win a championship. And that's the little bit of a disappointment about Embiid's career. When you get to the playoffs, again and again, we've had him perform really well in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, we haven't seen that same level of performance. And you want to see him compete against guys like Giannis. You want to see him compete against Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. You want to see him have performances like that to cement himself as one of those top 5 players in the NBA. And if he continues to play like he has recently, this aggressive, this drawing fouls, getting to the free throw line, then you're talking about a guy who can easily be in those top 5 discussions and be one of the best 2 or 3 players in the NBA. So tonight he shot 24 free throws. And like I talked about, I think that's the most powerful thing about Joel Embiid's game. When you couldn't guard Shaq, when you couldn't guard Dwight Howard, you could then foul them and try to send them to the free throw line to throw them off their rhythm, maybe make them a little less willing to go inside because they don't want to go to the free throw line. Sometimes it's embarrassing when you're bricking free throws, when you're airballing free throws. But Joel Embiid from the free throw line is money. He's unbelievable from the free throw line, has been his whole career, and that's really what makes him so good. He gets there at such a high pace, and obviously we know James Harden gets there. So this Sixers team, you have to be very careful about not fouling them, or else they'll just live at the free throw line the entire night. Now Embiid for the season, let me pull it up real quick, is averaging 29.3 points and 10 rebounds. Now that's before this game is calculated. So the 59-point performance will inevitably put him back over 30. And I think he'll be the 8th player in the NBA to now be averaging 30 points, which is unbelievable. We've had some incredible starts to the season. But let's move on a little. I want to talk about this Utah Jazz team for a second here because they really gave the Sixers all they could handle. And the Sixers now have won a couple games in a row. They have beat the Hawks the other night, which is a very quality win. They beat the Suns a couple nights ago. They did lose to the Hawks in between, but they started the season really, really cold, and I was starting to get worried because, to me, I'm not the biggest Doc Rivers fan in the world. I was kind of thinking maybe they should move on from Doc Rivers. I still kind of feel that way, but with Harden going out with the injury, you were a little worried about this team's depth. Could they keep up with, could they still compete with the depth they have? They're getting basically nothing from their bench. DeAnthony Melton, George Niang, Montrezl Harrell, Shake Milton, these guys aren't really giving them a whole lot. And that's a concern to me. Tonight they decided to start Matisse Thybulle, a guy who wasn't playing earlier in the season. He had 5 steals. Big story this game, Jazz had 17 turnovers. Tough to win when you have 17 turnovers. But yeah, let's move on to the Jazz here for a second. But Lauri Markennan has started this season playing unbelievable basketball. And tonight, he just couldn't, you kind of saw him go up against Embiid. He kind of played the forward. You had Olynyk trying to guard Embiid. He had 5 fouls. They just don't have one of those big men that can truly compete with Joel Embiid. But they got pretty good performances from Malik Beasley, Colin Sexton. Clarkson had an off night. Lauri Markennan and Kelly Olynyk both played okay. But this Jazz team, I would not panic if I was a Utah Jazz fan yet. You're on a couple game losing streak. You lost the other night too. Let me get it pulled up. You lost the other night to the Wizards. That's just a bad performance. It happens. But you're on a road trip. You're on a second night of a back-to-back, and you lose to one of the greatest performances of all time. I'm just kind of writing that off to kudos Joel Embiid. I'm so excited to watch what Embiid does with the rest of this season. I think that he's going to be in the MVP talks for the rest of the year. And I hope he continues to dominate. I hope he decides to play with his back to the basket, because that's one thing that he's so good in those little mid-range turnarounds, just taking you down to the paint and, getting little easy layups, dominating you. But when he starts to drift out to the three-point line, that's when Embiid is almost giving the defense a win, because when he goes inside, he either gets fouled or an easy bucket. He shoots 70% from the field tonight and then 20 of 24 from the free throw line. That's like, keep doing that. You know what I mean? So let's see what Joel Embiid continues to do. Let's see if he can keep his conditioning up for the season. And if this Philadelphia 76ers team can turn it around, let me pull up the standings real quick, because they were near the bottom, but as they've won a couple games, they're now number 7. So win a couple more games in a row, you got yourself right back where you want to be. No concern for me with the Philadelphia 76ers yet. I want to see when James Harden comes back how he integrates himself back into this offense. That's something that we were a little worried. Well, I thought that they were going to be a great combo. The Embiid Harden pick and roll was going to be one of those things that I wasn't sure how you were going to guard. But if Harden's isoing, if he's dribbling so much, you kind of lose a little bit of that Embiid domination factor, to where he's just getting the ball when Harden decides he's getting the ball. So play through Embiid. That's what the Philadelphia 76ers need to continue to do. Let Embiid get in shape a little bit, and this team's going to be just fine. They're going to be one of those teams that are competing at the end of the season. But that's all we got for you tonight. What a performance. Cyborg out.